Let me tell you something that may feel uncomfortable. The person smiling in your music face could secretly be hoping you fail when you turn around. And if you don't learn to notice it early, you'll keep giving access to people who are slowly draining your energy. If this feels personal, pause for a moment and tap music like or follow. Not for me, but to remind yourself that awareness is strength. They give backhanded compliments dressed up as concern, and this is often the first crack in the system if you know how to see it. Real support feels clear and steady, while fake support always leaves something heavy behind. A backhanded compliment is not true praise. It is hierarchy hidden inside kindness. It sounds like, "I'm proud of you, I just didn't think you had it in you." Or, "Music, that's impressive for someone like you." What they are really doing is sliding judgment inside wrapping paper. On the outside, it sounds positive, but underneath, there is a quiet reminder of where they think you stand. Music. This is not careless wording. This is dominance framing. They are gently reinforcing a mental position where they see themselves above you, more skilled, more experienced, more worthy. People who secretly resent you rarely attack openly because music that would expose their feelings. Instead, they plant doubt while pretending to water your confidence. They offer concern that weakens, advice that shrinks you, praise that makes you smaller. Psychologically, this lets them feel superior without appearing aggressive. They release their resentment while keeping social cover. And here is the risky part. If you don't, music see it. Your nervous system absorbs the signal. Over time, you begin to question yourself. Music. You replay their comments. You slowly accept their frame without realizing it. That is how confidence fades quietly. Backhanded compliments are designed to make you feel thankful and small at the same time. They split your perception. They're being kind, music. So why do I feel uneasy? That uncomfortable feeling is your intuition pointing out misalignment. Healthy people celebrate your progress without adding conditions. They don't sound shocked by your music ability. They don't attach disclaimers to your success. When someone repeatedly mixes praise with subtle criticism, it shows they feel threatened by your growth. Your improvement shakes their self-image, so they try to steady themselves by minimizing you. This behavior usually grows from insecurity, comparison, or quiet envy. But the reason is not the most important part. The pattern is, anyone who needs to lower you in order to feel secure is not safe. Music. Closeness. The right response is not confrontation, it is calibration. You stop oversharing, you limit emotional access. You stop searching for validation, music from that person. You observe, you adjust, and you guard your internal balance. Power is not reacting loudly. Power is recognizing the move and calmly changing your behavior. Remember, true allies do not decorate their support music with doubt. They don't hide skepticism inside compliments. They don't feel the need to remind you of music your past limits while acknowledging your current success. And once you see this clearly, you stop taking poisoned praise personally music, because you understand it was never about your skill. It was about their discomfort with your rise. They celebrate your setbacks more than your wins. And this music one is quiet because it hides behind sympathy. But once you notice it, music, you cannot ignore it. When something good happens to you, their reaction feels flat, delayed, or oddly technical. They nod instead of smile. They say nice instead of that's amazing. They quickly shift the conversation back to themselves. There is no real emotional investment in your progress. But when something goes wrong, suddenly they lean forward. They ask many questions. They offer advice you did not ask for. They become animated, engaged, almost music excited. That shift tells you everything. People reveal their true alignment through emotional reaction, not just words. Someone who quietly resents you experiences your success as a threat because music disturbs the invisible ranking system they carry in their mind. Your growth music forces them to face their own stagnation, so their nervous system, music, searches for comfort. That comfort appears when you stumble. Your setback restores balance in their internal scoreboard. That is why their sympathy feels forced while their curiosity during your failures feels genuine. They are not truly comforting you, they are calming themselves. Psychologically, this is known as downward comparison. They manage their self-worth by comparing themselves to someone, music, who is temporarily lower. It gives them a quiet sense of advantage without having to improve their own situation. And here is the dangerous part. If you continue sharing your struggles with someone like this, music, they begin to expect them. They quietly label you as the almost there person, the one who tries hard, the one who falls short. That music storyline becomes comfortable for them, so when you actually succeed, it creates tension. They do not know where to place you music anymore. That is why you may hear comments like, just don't get ahead of yourself, or let's see how long it lasts. That is not realism. That is containment. Music. They are trying to limit your momentum. Real allies feel uplifted by your victories. They feel motivated. They reflect your excitement. They music do not need extra proof. They do not wait for confirmation. They celebrate immediately because your success does not threaten who they are. But hidden haters need you manageable, predictable, slightly below them. Music. So they emotionally invest in your problems while emotionally pulling away from your progress. The right move here is not confrontation, it is music observation. You stop bringing them your good news. You stop giving them front row access to your sensitive moments. Music. You pay attention to who claps without being asked. You notice who only appears when you are hurting, because support that shows up mainly during your failures is not music real support, it is positioning. Once you understand this, you stop confusing attention with loyalty. You stop mixing up music advice with alignment. You learn to protect your wins quietly and heal in private. Remember, anyone who feels more energized when you are struggling is not music on your side. They are simply standing close enough to benefit from your fall. They quietly compete instead of cooperate. And this is where hidden hostility becomes strategic, because on the surface, everything still music looks warm. But underneath, there is a silent scoreboard in their mind. Every conversation becomes comparison. Every success becomes measurement. You share a goal, they immediately bring up music theirs. You talk about progress, they redirect to how far they have come. It is not open rivalry, it is subtle one-upmanship. Music. They never say, I'm competing with you. They just make sure their story comes right after yours, slightly louder, slightly greater. This happens because your presence touches their insecurity. Music. Instead of building side by side, they try to outrank you mentally. Collaboration requires shared respect. Competition requires hierarchy. And people who secretly dislike you depend on hierarchy because equality feels uncomfortable. They cannot simply feel happy music for you. They need to position themselves somewhere above or ahead. That is why they copy your ideas, mirror your steps, music, and suddenly show interest in whatever you are chasing, not because they truly love it, but because music they cannot handle feeling behind. They do not ask how they can support you. They ask questions that sound curious, but are actually quiet investigation. They study your timing, your routines, your next moves, then silently adjust their own, so they never feel left behind. Music. Here is the critical part. If you do not see this clearly, you begin oversharing strategy. You explain your plans in detail. You music, give deadlines. You reveal weak spots. Meanwhile, they are not offering the same openness. They are gathering information while guarding theirs. That imbalance explains everything. True collaborators exchange value. Hidden competitors collect it. You may also notice they struggle to give honest credit. They will say things like, music, yeah, we both did great, even when you carried most of the load. Or they frame your success as teamwork while privately highlighting their own effort in other spaces. That is image control. They do not want you standing alone in your win because that raises your status, so they water it down. Music. Psychologically, this grows from a scarcity mindset. They believe there is only limited space at the top. So instead of expanding the table, they try to push music for position. The right response is not aggression, it is awareness of boundaries. You stop sharing blueprints. You move quietly, you build silently, you let results speak without announcing every step, because once you understand the game, you stop playing it out loud. Absolutely. I've carefully gone through your script and slightly adjusted words and phrasing to make it smoother, still over 9,000 characters, and simple to read while keeping all meaning intact. Here's the revised version. Reach, harder to disturb and harder to drain, they notice it immediately. You don't announce it, you don't explain it, you just become less available, you leave earlier, you engage less, you steer conversations differently, you put your goals above their drama, and something shifts inside you. At the same time, your nervous system relaxes. You stop living in constant reaction. You start moving with intention. Instead of waking up tired and drained, you wake up focused. Instead of carrying other people's emotions, you carry your own direction. This also teaches people how to treat you without saying a word. When you stop overgiving, people either step up to meet your standards or step away. And that's exactly what you want. Because anyone who only values you when you're available to be drained was never truly on your side. Pulling back doesn't need confrontation. It requires discipline. It requires saying no without guilt. It requires choosing solitude over chaos sometimes. It requires realizing that always being available is not kindness. It's self-abandonment. As you bring your energy back into your own life, your confidence grows quietly, your presence shifts, you become centered. Toxic people sense that change and naturally disengage because they can no longer feed. You don't need to push them out, you just stop supplying them. And when the supply stops, so does the targeting. When you stop oversharing personal struggles, you remove one of the strongest tools toxic people use against you. Vulnerability in the wrong space becomes ammunition. Most people think opening up always creates connection, but with the wrong audience, it creates leverage. Every detail you casually reveal about your fears, your past, your insecurities, or your stress becomes data. Toxic people don't listen to empathize. They listen to find patterns. They remember what hurts you. They notice what makes you doubt yourself, and later, subtly or directly, they use it. Oversharing shows where your soft spots are. It teaches people what to press to get a reaction. The change happens when you start practicing quiet strength. You don't lie. You don't become cold. You just become selective. You stop explaining why you're exhausted. You stop narrating your healing. You stop giving play-by-play updates on your struggles. You let people notice results, not wounds. This builds a strong psychological boundary. Suddenly, there's less for anyone to manipulate. Your inner world becomes private, and privacy is protection. When you heal quietly, you rebuild inner trust. Instead of seeking validation by sharing, you learn to process emotions internally or with people who have proven safety over time. That changes your confidence. You begin standing taller. You stop needing reassurance from unstable sources. Your energy becomes contained instead of scattered. Toxic people sense that immediately. They feel when someone no longer broadcasts weakness. They notice when conversations stay surface level. They get frustrated when they can't access your inner life. And frustration leads to disengagement. This doesn't mean isolating yourself. It means choosing wisely. Not everyone deserves to know your story. Not everyone earns access to your growth. Silence becomes part of your discipline. You realize strength isn't loud. It doesn't announce pain. It doesn't beg for understanding. It moves forward quietly. As you stop oversharing, your emotional boundaries strengthen. You become harder to read, harder to provoke, harder to destabilize. Your presence shifts from reactive to grounded. And the biggest change happens inside you. You stop outsourcing your healing. You stop giving pieces of yourself away hoping to be seen. You start holding yourself with respect. Toxic people lose interest because they can't extract emotional material anymore. There's nothing to twist, nothing to replay, nothing to weaponize. You become internally solid. When your inner world becomes guarded, your outer world becomes peaceful because targeting only works when there's something exposed. When you show calm confidence instead of defensiveness, you flip the whole power dynamic. Toxic people are wired to feed on insecurity, not strength. Defensiveness signals doubt. It tells them you're questioning yourself, that their words landed, that they still have access. Calm confidence does the opposite. It communicates stability without explanation. You don't rush to clarify. You don't scramble to prove your intentions. You don't raise your voice to be heard. You just stand grounded in who you are. This isn't arrogance. It's quiet certainty. It shows in your body language, pacing, eye contact, and tone. You speak slower. You choose your words carefully. You don't fill silence out of discomfort. You allow pauses. That composure creates pressure because now they don't know how to move you. Most people get defensive when challenged. They justify themselves, they overtalk, they try to convince. And in doing that, they give control away. Calm confidence keeps control with you. You respond, not react. You acknowledge without agreeing. You listen without absorbing. That steadiness unsettles anyone who thrives on emotional chaos. Toxic people want spikes: anger, guilt, fear, embarrassment. When they can't create those spikes, their tactics fail. Your calm becomes a mirror, forcing them to face their own instability. That's why they either escalate briefly or leave. Either way, they lose interest. This also changes how you feel internally. You stop bracing for confrontation. You stop rehearsing arguments in your head. You trust yourself to handle situations as they come. That trust creates presence. Presence creates authority. People treat you differently without you asking. You're no longer seen as someone who can be rattled. You become someone who holds space instead of losing it. Calm confidence teaches emotional discipline. You realize you don't need to defend your character to people committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need approval from those who don't respect you. You don't need to explain your growth. You let your consistency speak. Over time, this becomes natural. You walk into rooms centered. You leave conversations unbothered. You stop carrying other people's moods. Toxic individuals sense this shift immediately. They feel the wall. They feel the distance. They feel the lack of emotional return. Because there's nothing left to provoke, they move on. Calm confidence makes you energetically unavailable to drama. It makes you unshakable in situations that used to drain you. That's when targeting ends. Not because you fought harder, but because you became solid enough that their chaos can't reach you. When you raise your standards for how people treat you, you create a filter that automatically repels toxic behavior. You no longer tolerate disrespect, manipulation, or inconsideration under any guise. Most people operate without clear standards, which is why toxic individuals find them easy targets. They can bend them, exploit them, and repeatedly cross lines without consequence. Raising standards doesn't mean being rigid or cold. It means deciding what you will and won't accept and enforcing it consistently, even when it's uncomfortable. You start noticing patterns, not just isolated incidents. You recognize gossip, backhanded compliments, entitlement, and manipulation as signals to step back or disengage. You stop rationalizing bad behavior or excusing people who repeatedly cross boundaries. This is about self-respect, not punishment. When you maintain clear standards, your presence communicates that mistreatment has a cost, and the cost is simply that you remove yourself from the situation. Toxic people are highly sensitive to these costs. They have no patience for people who won't tolerate chaos, who won't give loopholes, and who won't bend under pressure. Over time, attempts to provoke, belittle, or control you fail because your line is firm. Standards also reinforce your internal alignment. You no longer compromise your peace for temporary approval. You focus on relationships and environments that match your values and support your growth. That inner clarity radiates outward, creating a magnetic confidence others notice instinctively. Toxic people feel it as subtle resistance, an invisible barrier blocking access. They test, prod, and eventually move on because they can't exploit you without consequences. Raising standards doesn't just repel toxicity externally, it transforms how you see yourself internally. You develop sharper judgment, stronger discernment, and the courage to act on what's right for you. The moment your standards become non-negotiable, targeting stops. It's not about confrontation or retaliation. It's about establishing your value clearly and living consistently within it, leaving no room for anyone who wants to diminish, manipulate, or drain you. Self-respect becomes the ultimate shield. When you focus fully on your own growth, toxic people become irrelevant. You remove yourself from their orbit because your energy, attention, and drive are no longer available for their games, and they sense it instantly. Toxic individuals thrive on distraction. They want to hijack your thoughts, pull you into arguments, and redirect your energy toward their chaos instead of your goals. The moment you commit fully to self-improvement, discipline, and personal achievement, you remove that leverage. You don't argue over petty disputes. You don't justify your choices. You don't seek validation from people who want to drain you. Your life becomes about progress, not reaction. And that shift alone disarms anyone who thrives on drama. Focusing on growth doesn't mean ignoring social dynamics. It means prioritizing your path over temporary conflicts. You invest your time in building skills, habits, relationships that empower you, and projects that move you forward instead of worrying about manipulation or criticism. This creates an invisible barrier. Your energy is fully occupied, your mindset is aligned, your presence becomes forward-moving rather than reactive. Toxic people sense when energy is unavailable. They feel that focus as a subtle but unbreakable boundary. Over time, attempts to provoke guilt or control you fail because you no longer feed the loops they rely on. Internally, this focus builds resilience, patience, and clarity. You stop overanalyzing their actions, stop giving small provocations meaning, and stop letting their behavior dictate your mood or decisions. Externally, it signals independence and self-reliance. People see you operate on your own terms, and toxic individuals instinctively back off. They realize there's nothing left to take. Growth becomes your shield because it replaces fear, distraction, and emotional dependency with achievement, purpose, and self-determination. Once your life is fully occupied by your own progress, targeting ends naturally, not because of confrontation, but because you're energetically unavailable, mentally untouchable, and committed to a path they can't influence. In that space, toxicity simply falls away.